Families have a lot going on. Let Ollie help manage the mental load with new cognitive help supplements for everyone 4 and up, like delicious Lolly Focus Pops or Lolly Mellow Pops for kids. And for parents, try 3 new Brainy Chews to help you focus, chill out, or get energized. Find these cognitive health buddies for the whole fam at ollie.com. That's OLLY.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Did you know that Organifi makes products for kids? They just launched their brand new kids product called Organifi Protect. This is a delicious wild berry punch that tastes just like Kool-Aid you used to have as a kid, but without the sugar. This delicious berry punch is crafted with the purest organic ingredients, including a potent combination to bolster your child's immune defenses. It's especially formulated for kids with no artificial ingredients and gentle enough for them to drink every day. If you already love Organifi, you can add Organifi Kids Protect into your regimen, or if you're new to Organifi, check out their line of organic superfood blends that offer plant-based nutrition and high-quality ingredients, helping you move from a depleted to nourished state. Head over to www.organifi.com/bestofyou and use code bestofyou for 20% off your entire order. That's www.organifi.com/bestofyou. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Allison, and I'm so glad you're here to discover what brings out the best of you. This podcast is all about breaking free from painful patterns, mending the past, and discovering our true selves in God. I can't wait to get started as we learn together how to become the best version of who we are with God's help. Hey everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Best of You podcast. I am so glad you're here. I know we're well into summer, and for those of you who subscribe to my weekly email, I mentioned in last week's email that this month has been packed for me and for my family with some major milestone events, including our daughter's graduation from college, our son getting married, and the weddings of some of our closest family friends. It has been a season. Talk about kicking up emotions inside my own system. I am so aware right now of the deep joy that I'm experiencing right there side by side with moments of grief, even with moments of sadness. I'm so aware of all that it is taking for me to hang on to myself and not let any one emotion dominate my internal landscape, including the anxiety about all of these events, planning them, hosting people, hoping things go well. All of those emotions are so present inside of my soul. And I have to say, in all honesty, with the last 2 months, really, including the book launch of I Shouldn't Feel This Way, going into all of these major family events, it has taken a lot for me to hang on to myself so that I'm leading these parts of me, letting the different emotions have their place in my soul and having appropriate outlets so that any one of those emotions doesn't completely take over. And as a result of that, I've needed to scale back a little bit. I've needed to, as I sometimes say, let some of the plates that I'm spinning or the balls that I'm juggling fall to the ground. And that's uncomfortable to parts of me that like control. And so it was no surprise to me when I finally saw the new Pixar movie Inside Out 2. We talked about it on last week's episode with Jenna Reemserma that I started to cry as I watched anxiety finally relinquish its grip on the control board of Riley's life. Tears just started streaming down my face as I could sense in my own system that invitation to surrender. And what moved me so much about that moment in the movie is the compassion with which the rest of the parts of Riley's soul met anxiety. They didn't shame anxiety for taking control in a way that was kind of embarrassing and even led to Riley doing some things that she wished she hadn't done. Instead, they embraced anxiety with compassion. It was a beautiful picture of what can happen in our souls when we release the grip of any one of those emotions that wants to dominate our lives, whether it's anxiety, whether it might be anger, whether it might be self-doubt, whether it might be an overly exuberant joy that takes over and is sort of aggressively happy in a way that can be off-putting to other people. Whatever that part of you is that has been vying for control of your life, I wonder what part of you is longing to hear the quiet voice of God's whisper saying, "Come to me, you who are heavy burdened and working overtime to keep things together. Come away from that control board, that vice grip of control you are holding. Come to me, and I will give you rest." Before we get started today, I want to read to you a section from Boundaries for Your Soul where we describe our understanding of the self, or what we call the spirit-led self, this mysterious place inside of you from which you can lead the parts of yourself wisely in partnership with God's Spirit. Here's from Boundaries for Your Soul. Your spirit-led self is you when you are being led by God, who abides within your soul. Many psychologists and spiritual leaders have explored this idea of what we are calling the spirit-led self. For example, beloved author Henry Nouwen described that place in your soul where you have clear perspective, where you can gather together your thoughts and desires and emotions and hold them together in truth. Nouwen wrote the following: "You have to trust that there is another place where you can be safe. Maybe it's wrong to think about this new place as beyond emotions, passions, and feelings. Beyond could suggest that these human sentiments are absent there. Instead, try thinking about this place as the core of your being, your heart, where all human sentiments are held together in truth. From this place, you can feel, think, and act truthfully." Likewise, psychologists Henry Cloud and John Townsend refer to a space inside where you can experience your feelings without fear of judgment, a place where these parts of your soul can receive the attention they need so you don't act out in hurtful ways. Cloud and Townsend say it this way: we need to have spaces inside ourselves where we can have a feeling, an impulse, or a desire without acting it out. We need self-control without repression. In this place, your spirit-led self holds you together in truth. From here, you can draw a troubling emotion in closer or ask it to step back so that you can develop perspective. You can invite Jesus to be with the parts of you most in need of his presence. Your spirit-led self can minister to your troubling thoughts and feelings so that they are witnessed and transformed. As a result of connecting to the parts of yourself from this place inside, you will begin to enjoy healthy boundary lines inside your soul. My guest today, Tammy Sollenberger, is no stranger to this work of befriending the parts of the soul. In addition to being a beloved friend, Tammy is a licensed clinical mental health counselor and an internal family systems IFS certified supervisor. She's the host of the One Inside, an internal family systems IFS podcast, which is one of the very first podcasts to explore the world of IFS. She's the author of The One Inside, 30 Days to Your Authentic Self. And she's here today to share with us very candidly some of her own early childhood experiences that led her to develop some heavy burdens that affected her all the way into adulthood. Please enjoy my conversation with Tammy Sollenberger. Tammy, I just love talking to you always. We always have such great conversations. I'm such a big fan of your podcast, The One Inside. It's such a great resource for anyone who wants to go deeper. And then your book, The One Inside, which I love. It's 30 meditations.
It's 30 days to your authentic self. And so basically what it does is it's a day by day, teaches you the IFS model, but it teaches you by going inside and helping you get to know your own system. So it kind of does two things. It's super user friendly, and they're just sort of little chapters that help you like What does it mean for me to have parts? And how do I pay attention to my parts? And how do I know who is here? And how do I know how to track them? And how do I start listening to them? And it just is a very bite-sized way for you to begin to understand and learn and befriend your own personality.
This is a fantastic resource for beginners to learn about the model, but not just beginners, because I got a lot out of it too.
Yeah, thank you. And, I sent it to one of the IFS trainers. I emailed him and I was like, what did you think of it? And he was like, it's basic and simple. And I was like, great. That's exactly what I want it to be. Because there isn't another book like that.
Well, I love it. And you're a seasoned IFS therapist. You do this work all the time. You actually consult with IFS therapists who are getting their certification. You lead some groups in IFS. I mean, you are seasoned in the model. So the fact that you can take something really complicated and distill it into basic principles is actually really hard to do. And I commend you for it, which is why we love this movie Inside Out and the new one Inside Out too, right? Because that's exactly what it's doing. It's taking it out of therapy and into normal mainstream life. We all have these parts, from little kids to ourselves to our friends. And it's just such a helpful way to think about the people that we love and ourselves at basic level, at the foundational level of the soul, right? Is we have different parts of us.
Yeah, I love it. Right. So an Inside Out has really done just this marvelous job of making this idea mainstream. Anybody, any age can really begin to have this language of a part of me feels sad, a part of me feels mad, a part of me is jealous, a part of me is bored, and I'm allowed to speak for them and I'm allowed to say them, and they make sense. Like, it makes sense that I would have a variety of parts and a variety of different emotions running my system. And so, yeah, I think the movie does such a great job of explaining these concepts that are kind of higher level concepts, but it does such a good job of making it not that complicated.
So toward that end, Tammy, I actually am dying to ask you some of these questions because I don't know these aspects of your story. I know a lot about your current life. I know a lot about, as we've gotten to know each other, for some reason, I don't know as much about your personal history. And we're kind of in this series looking at these personal stories about when these parts form. Like we see Riley, right? She's moved across the country. She's got to deal with new friends, new school, all these things. And we see how that external experience and the way she relates to her family, her parents, her literal parents, begin to shape the development of the different parts of her. I would love to learn a little bit more from you, if you would be so gracious as to allow us to go back in time for a moment. As you think about your preteen self, the younger you, the little young Tammy, what are some of the characters or the parts of yourself that you now understand were parts? At the time, I'm sure you had no sense of that vocabulary. But how do you see that younger you and how she was existing in the world at maybe 6th grade, 7th grade, middle school? I see your face just immediately grow compassionate and empathetic. That's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, so Riley is 13. And so, yeah, I mean, this is a huge time of our lives, right? This huge transition, developmentally, physically. So, yeah, I mean, I think because you're you and because we have this relationship, it does feel really safe. And I always say on my podcast, too, that like, I'm not thinking about the people listening. I'm just thinking about you. So I'm just thinking about my friend Allison and me and you having this conversation. So it feels really safe for me to sort of share this. And so growing up, my mom and dad were 16 when they had me. And there's a huge sort of story there. But, they got married. My mom was Catholic. They got married and then they got divorced sort of a year or two later. So my mom was a single mom. My dad was kind of in and out, but I would see him every other weekend. And I still have a relationship with him. And then both of them got married. I think I was maybe 6 or 7 when my dad married my stepmom, who he's still married to. So they both have these really long marriages since then. So my dad married my stepmom and they had 3 boys. And then it was just my mom and I till I was 10. And then my mom married my stepdad. He had a daughter that was my age. And then they had a daughter. So I have a sister who's 10 years. So basically I have a dad and a stepmom and 3 brothers. And then I have my mom and my stepdad. And then I have a sister who's 10 years younger than me.
Slow down for a second, because talk about a complicated family system. The friend and the therapist in me is like, okay, if you're okay with me slowing it down. Because what I heard in that, Tammy, is you have a few half-brothers and a half-sister who's 10 years younger, and then also a stepsister who's roughly your same age.
That's right.
That's a lot of change for a 10-year-old.
Yeah, it's a lot of change. And what I remember is that I was a really happy kid. Because in general, like I'm a really happy sort of sunshiny person, like as an adult. And I was a really happy kid that I remember.
You have a strong joy part.
Yes.
I see that part
Yes,
of you.
I have lots of joy.
To use the movie.
Anger has been completely exiled, but joy is here in abundance, and we like joy. And sadness is pretty good too. We like sad and joy. But to bring the IFS piece in a little bit, so my first big training with IFS was I did a week with Dick, who's the founder, Dick Schwartz, at Cape Cod Institute about 11 years ago. So I did this week-long workshop with Dick, and there was times where there's pieces of teaching, and then there's times where you could work with somebody kind of one-on-one. And the first big piece of work that I did was this 10-year-old part of me who lost her mom. And I was sobbing, like hysterically crying, and I did not know that was there. Like I had this so much pain of losing my mom, and I did not know that was there. But looking back and thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because for me, it was me and my mom. And I remember we lived in this little tiny, we call it the beach cottage. We lived in this little tiny beach cottage, and we bought, if I remember this correctly, like we each had different types of toothpaste that we bought. And to me, I had a happy life. Like my poor mom was a single mom and, 26 years old with a 10-year-old, so working full time, but I'm like happy as can be. And then all of a sudden, into my system, we move across the street. So I go to a different school. All of a sudden, there's a stepdad who's the nicest guy. He's a nice guy, but there's this man, his daughter, who was very, very tough and ended up getting kind of asked to leave our house when we were 16. So there was a lot of stuff there. And then my mom got pregnant basically immediately. So, by the time I'm 11, I have a baby sister, a stepsister, a stepdad, a new house. And so there was all this loss. There's all this loss. And I think that my system basically exiled all this pain. And so we're just going to be cheery. We're going to be a nice girl. We're going to be a good girl. We're not going to cause any problems. And so those are the parts of me, probably from 10, probably till about 14, that was sort of like, I'm just going to be a good girl and I'm not going to have any feelings. There's not going to be any pain or sadness. And there's nothing about me, right? There's no me here, right? My feelings about losing my mom and what this was like for me. And that didn't even dawn on me that I could even speak for like what this was like for me. Until probably 14, probably when puberty hit, I think I just got very sad and was super emotional and really just could not find. The word comes up for me as sort of like identity. Like I just couldn't find, like you sort of see Riley, like she's got hockey. Like I didn't have a thing. I was never really good at anything. I didn't have a thing. And so I just really struggled with like, I was just okay at school. I didn't really care about school. I cared about my friends, just like Riley. Riley cares about her friends, and that's most important to her. And I think I tried to find different friend groups. I think looking back, and I think this is where sort of the church comes in later, is I really wanted to be wanted. And I have this, when I've done my IFS work, I have this exile around not being wanted. Like, of course you weren't wanted. You had teenage parents. You weren't wanted. And my parents were really good about saying you're wanted and you're loved. And they would say that. They were very good about that. But this part of me says, well, the truth is you weren't wanted. Like, let's be honest, Tammy. You were not wanted. That's who you are. And so I have this part that is kind of and it will say like it's just in my blood. Like not being wanted is in my blood. And so I have then these other parts that do anything that they can do to be wanted. And we see this in the movie with Riley, where she leaves her really good friends to go with the popular girls, and she makes some really bad decisions. And I think I would have done anything to be wanted. Like, just want me, just include me, just let me be a part of it, give me identity. And so I sort of flounder, right? I flounder with friends, I flounder with boys. Once, high school comes, I'm just wanting to be wanted by boys. And as a 3, 3 is we want to be successful. And so it wasn't like I wasn't successful at school, I wasn't successful at sports, but it'd be like, okay, but if I want to be with this boy, that would be the way I could be successful. Or, being fun or whatever. Like that's how I could be successful. So then my system, when we think about parts. There's a lot of protection around this being wanted. And then what happens when I feel unwanted? And so I have all these parts that kind of swirl around the idea of being wanted and unwanted.
Gosh, there's a lot in that. And I can tell there's also a lot of years of getting to know those different parts. And so this is the power of IFS. It makes sense that a part of you picked up burdens all along the way. I would imagine as you started doing the work with Dick 11 years ago, there were memories that surprised you of things that happened that reinforced that burden that wasn't necessarily true, but moments where maybe even your parents were trying not to reinforce that burden, but maybe something happened that did reinforce that burden. Were there some key memories or moments as you've done some of this work as an adult that you would go back to in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of why this work is so powerful is you can go back. But when I go back, it's not traumatic to go back because then I am there with me, the adult leader, the authentic self. Like I can be then with my, sixth grade part that felt like she had no friends and was sitting in the middle school cafeteria and felt this incredible aloneness. Like I can go back and be with her in that moment in the way that she needed someone, whether she needed my mom or she needed a friend. I can go back and be what she needed and really get her out of that place that she's still in, where she's still, because that's what happens in our bodies is I still have these parts that feel that unwantedness or the no sense of belonging or these two families, but I don't exist really in either one of them. I'm not really wanted. Part of me believes the burden, I'm not really wanted in either one of these families, which again, other parts of me say that's not true at all. But there's this burden of I don't fit and I'm not wanted.
And you're exactly right. We have these rational, logical parts of us, right, that get, no, my parents loved me. But this is what the listener who hasn't experienced this, I want you to understand, these are stored in our memories. I remember when I was writing Boundaries for Your Soul and we were supposed to come up with stories. And I thought, my stories are just dumb. And the story that I tell in Boundaries for Your Soul of not making the basketball team in, I think it was 7th grade, right, which is such a formative year. I worked my tail off, a good little Enneagram 3 part of me. I worked at it. I worked hard to make that team. And when the day came and I walked into the locker room and the list of names was up and my name wasn't on that list, the shame that overwhelmed me. I had bought brand new sneakers that were the sneakers that the real basketball player girls were wearing. And this was in a time when that was a big expenditure. People just didn't throw away money on brand name sneakers. It was a big deal. Like I got them, I think, for a Christmas present, And then I didn't make the team. And I was just mortified and swallowed up by shame because I had to then wear those sneakers and I didn't make the team, right? And my parents actually loved me through that as best they could. It wasn't even like any horrible big T trauma thing that we might think of had happened, but the way that my parts were lined up and the way that that story landed in that moment with other things that had happened to me as a child was just this feeling of invisibility. My name is never on the list. I'm always invisible. And I could find then moments, and I still to this day have to update that part of me because I can find all those moments when that happened. And I don't notice the moments where, my friends will say, Allison, are you kidding me? Like you were always on the honor roll. You're always on all these lists. I'm like, didn't matter. I only remember the ones I didn't make and the shame that I felt. And I bring that in. I hear you saying so well, Tammy, and so clearly, right? Those burdens get picked up. And sometimes the memories that we have where there's pain are surprising to the logical, rational parts of us. They're like, but you sometimes don't make the team. It doesn't matter. I had to go back to the place of that memory and be with the young girl who in that moment just buried that feeling of shame deep inside.
Well, in the movie, Riley, she has these sort of balls of memory. And what you see in the second movie is she really, Joy exiles any balls that are shame. She sort of puts up in this little sucker thing and just sort of sucks it away and sort of puts it in the basement. And that's what we do with memories or things that don't align. And so joy does that with sort of sad things, right? Or shaming things, right? Nope, we're only going to keep the happy balls, the happy memories, the happy moments, the little balls that reinforce that we are loved and we are good and we're happy and we're a good friend and we're smart and all these beautiful things that we want to believe. We're just going to keep those balls. But what happens is our system, because it's so protective in nature, we sort of hold on to the balls that reinforce that burden. So if I have a burden of being unwanted, my system, my parts, like almost are hypervigilant for looking for anything or anyone, right? It's sort of that idea of one person says, I don't like you. It doesn't matter that there's a million people out there that think I'm the best thing in the world. My system is going to focus on that one person and like highlight that little ball. That memory then is going to become sort of stored as evidence of my burden.
That is so well stated. And I can then imagine as you're going through high school and the social jungle of high school and young adulthood, the exhaustion of trying to make sure every guy, every girl, everyone likes you and everyone is wanting you and pursuing the ones, maybe even I'm wondering here, what do you do with the ones who don't want you? That would just be devastating, as opposed to learning, oh, wait a minute, there's another way to go through life in terms of relating to other people. Did you know that most air fresheners and candles release dangerous chemicals into the air? And that water-based essential oil diffusers can diffuse harmful contaminants like lead, arsenic, and bacteria directly into the air you breathe? So how can you scent your home and keep your loved ones safe? Introducing AromaTrue, the state-of-the-art waterless atomizing diffuser that transforms essential oils into a fine mist without the need for water. Say goodbye to sticky messes and worries about mold or bacteria. AromaTrue's innovative design efficiently disperses up to 4 oils at a time, allowing you to create your own custom fragrance blends with just the touch of a button. And not only does AromaTrue make revolutionary diffusers, they're also dedicated to selling sustainably produced USDA-certified organic or wildcrafted essential oils. Sign up for AromaTrue's Insider Club today and you'll receive a free waterless oil diffuser and a free lemon eucalyptus oil. That's over $200 in savings. Head over to aromatrueorganics.com/bestofyou to take advantage of this exclusive offer. That's aromatrueorganics.com/bestofyou. Join AromaTrue's Insider Club and scent your home organically. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. It's hard to believe we're already into summer. When life goes by so fast, it's important to take a moment to pause and check in. What do you want to celebrate so far from the year? And what are some adjustments you might want to make for the rest of the year? Therapy can help you take stock of your progress and set achievable goals for the next 6 months. You might want to think about your family, your friendships, your personal goals. Where do you feel like you're making progress, and where do you feel like you might be able to use some help? If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. This summer, take a moment. Visit betterhelp.com/bestofyou today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/bestofyou. Tell me, Tammy, as you got older and you brought some of these burdens with you into adulthood, when did you begin to realize, oh, this might not be working? This strategy for gaining love and gaining a feeling of being wanted might not be working?
That's a good question. We talk about the C's of self-energy. So the authentic self is that leader, that essence of who we are. The divine us inside is this authentic self. And we use these C qualities. And a C that is not listed in the C qualities is choice. And we often think about, right, like if I had choice, if I had more perspective, what choices would I make that would be different, right? If I'm only making choices that are protective in nature because my parts are like, I have to make choices to be wanted or not wanted. So I'm going to pick jobs or hobbies or activities or friends or people that really try to reinforce and sort of create a space of being wanted. And if I get any feeling that this person isn't really going to want me, they're not in the club. So to answer your question, when I was 21, I got really involved in my boyfriend at the time, who became my husband. We got married when I was 22, and we got really involved in his church. And that really shifted my whole life for probably 20 years, that I got really involved in church. And that was a community. I had a good church experience. I have not had a traumatic church experience at all, even though I don't really go to an evangelical church now, but I had a good experience for the most part. But, I think that's where sort of the Enneagram 3 the busyness and the tasks and the being good at something, that's when that started coming into play when I was in my 20s. Like all of a sudden I wasn't chasing boys anymore. I was like, oh, I'm actually not dumb. I'm kind of smart. And so if I take a class, I want an A+. If I teach this Bible study, it needs to be really good. I need to spend hours on it. I want everyone to come to my Bible study. Like it really shifted to this sort of idea of being wanted, and the idea of success shifted to be really good at this other thing.
So Tammy, is it fair to say on some level your strategy just shifted to more either church sanctioned or socially acceptable sanctioned ways, but really you hadn't healed those deeper inner parts of you? You just shifted from getting the affection of boys and popularity to, I'm going to be the best Bible study leader. I'm going to be the best therapist. I'm going to be the best wife, friend, church member.
I would say yes, except for I don't know that I ever that I ever wanted to be the best wife, which I'm so sorry to my ex-husband. But to be completely honest, that wasn't there. And I can feel that now, because now I have a partner and I feel differently. I feel this idea of like, I want to be a good partner to him. And I look back and I think, wow, I never felt that way with my husband. Like it was sort of like, yep, got him, check off the list, turn around, what else are we doing?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And that's been something that has been, it's just interesting to sort of notice. So I'm not judging it, but I'm just really noticing that like, wow, that was not on my list. And an Enneagram 1 is going to want to be perfect and be the best at something. And a 3's drivenness isn't about that. It really isn't about being the best. It's more about the accomplishment of it, right? Like, the accomplishment, or I think for me, it was that idea, and maybe for you too, it's like the idea of being wanted, right? So my success is being wanted. It's not even really being the best at it. When I think about my book or the podcast, right, I have a lot of like, it's good enough. Let's just accomplish it and get stuff. Like I'm just get stuff done. And so it has a different kind of flavor.
It makes sense. And I really appreciate your honesty, Tammy. And I'm thinking of the listener, there's such an honesty. And I think this is something IFS affords, is we can really look at ourselves honestly because we remove the shame and we really just get curious. And I really hear you saying, as you look back, and it makes sense to me that there's an Enneagram 3 part of you that was like, I can check off the list, marriage. I've accomplished marriage, which is a very different way of looking at it than what does it mean to consistently show up for this other human being that I've chosen to bring into my life, or God has put into my life. And there's such an honesty. I have no doubt there's a whole nother side to that story. We won't go into that, but I do appreciate the honesty of your own ability to go, no, in reality, when I look back, yes, there was a lot of me wanting accomplishments. And I think that is, you're right. That's a good pushback on that. It's not being the best. There's wanting the success. And it makes sense to me that at that young age, it's like, okay, I did that, done. Next. And that probably did impact from your side of things, how you could show up as a friend and a partner and an intimate person in a long-term relationship. That's really honest. I just want to pause there. I think that's unusual and worthy of just pausing on, oh gosh, yeah, this is what was going on with me. Without shame, with real honesty, there's a freedom in that.
Well, I like what you're saying, because I think IFS really does that. Like if we look at Riley in this movie, we can really look at these parts of her Which is sort of, yeah, of course there's an anxious part of her, a sad part. Like these parts are here. We don't have to judge them or apologize for them, or we can be curious about them. We can see how much they love Riley and how hard they work for her. And that's the same thing with our parts, right? My parts, the parts of me that were like, let's pick a boy and let's be boy crazy and let's do what we need to do to be wanted. And the parts of me that feel really unwanted, I really understand them. Like it makes sense to me that they're there. It makes sense to me why they're there. Not in a logic way, but in a heart way. Like my heart, my open heart, myself can really understand in a loving way how these parts are trying to help me. And if we kind of make it a little simplistic, my system really just gets built around this idea of being unwanted and success, right? Just these two things that are highlighted for me being an Enneagram 3 and coming from the family that I did. Then think about the parts of me that work really hard to make sure those things happen. And then think about the parts of me that come in when that doesn't happen, right? When my name isn't on the basketball list. And then all these parts have to come in to help me with these feelings of failure, with these feelings of being unwanted. I mean, that happens with my son. If my son, my 13-year-old, he's an only child. I had a hard time having him. And so when there's any little hint that he doesn't want me, my system goes haywire. And there's rage and there's shutdown because my system is built. All the parts around that console that are in Riley's system, my system, the console is built around this idea of being wanted and unwanted. And so when there's feelings around that, everyone goes crazy, right? So then I have to be there to say, hey guys, I'm here. I am with you. Turn and look at me. I am with you, right? And so we have self that kind of steps into the room, which we don't really see that in Inside Out too. But I come into the room and I say, I am here. I want you. I love you. Let's see, what do you need from me? Let's have a connection with me and sort of see what happens to these sweet parts when I enter the room.
Can we move into that a little bit, Tammy? Because I love what you're saying. What does that actually look like? Because it's so real when you talk about your son triggering you, that those old childhood 10-year-old parts of you that felt unwanted. So how do you actually, in a moment, let's just for a moment imagine, even put yourself in the setting of something he might do that would trigger that inside of you. Can you give us a little glimpse of how you've gotten to know those parts that show up? How do you even notice it in your body?
I've noticed it happens usually when I pick him up from school in the car. So I'll pick him up and there'll be this, he's tired, he's anxious, and it's just sometimes there's a hard transition. And so he'll say something. And what I notice in my body is it feels like I disappear. Like it feels like I could be singing and having a little dance party by myself, waiting to pick him up. He gets in the car and I'm like, hey, baby, how are you? How was your day? La, 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 right? Because joy is usually here. And I'm all joy, 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 joy. And he says something and I enjoy joy, joy. And he says something else. And then all of a sudden I feel like an invisible cloak has sort of come over me and I don't even feel like I'm there. I'm putting my hands on 10 and 2, right? My hands are on 10 and 2. I'm driving the car and all of a sudden it's like there's no more personality here, right? It's like I go from singing to I'm not here at all. And I'm aware, I'm here, I'm aware, but I really feel this cloak of nothingness that I've completely shut down. I'm shut down, I'm numb. It feels like it takes over my whole body.
Sounds like a nervous system response. It's not freeze necessarily, but you really do go into a form of a fight-flight response inside of you. A part takes you out, essentially.
Yeah.
We all have those experiences. And as you work with the parts, how do you in that moment hang on to yourself?
Yeah. So one of the things I think is really true is it's happened so much. And this has become a part of me that when I think about it and I consider some of those moments that were really hard, I'm like, oh yeah, this part's been around for a long time, right? It predates my son, right? It predates. It goes back to when I was little, sort of this really protective, kind of cloaking, numbing, shutting down part of me. And so I think one of the things that I really recommend for listeners is to become really familiar with what we call your major players. Who are the major players that are driving your bus? Because then you can get really familiar with when they come, right? So this sort of shutdown part, I'm like, oh, here you are, buddy. right? Like it's almost like if sadness takes over that console for Riley. We all know what sadness feels like. Like, she's got her little cute face and her little voice, and we're all familiar with that part for Riley. And so for me, and I think for us, it's really getting familiar with like, oh, that's what's here right now, right? So it's so totally blended, totally took over that console, totally started driving the bus. And so what I'll do now is I just will begin to breathe. And I will say, I am here. I am here. Let me be here. And what I'm saying to the part is, I'm here. Like adult self, I'm here. I know that you're here. I know that you're trying to protect me, but I'm letting you know that I'm here. Let me be here. And it might take the 20-minute drive home. And I don't go jump back into sort of singing. And it might take me an hour or two, right? To sort of like just breathe. And you see this beautiful scene in Inside Out 2 where Riley has this panic attack at the hockey thing. And we sort of see what happens inside with anxiety. But outside, what we see when Joy sort of takes back over, we see Riley breathe. We see her open her eyes and look down at her skates. We see her senses come back online, right? We see that she can hear the hockey puck and the hockey skates. We see this beautiful moment of her senses really grounding her. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm saying to this part, hey, bud, I know that you're here. I know you're here for a good reason. Thank you for being here. Like, I get it. And I'm here. Let me be here. Let me be here with him. I've got this. You don't need to be here. And let's just breathe and let's look around. And I'll stop talking to him, right? I'm not going to engage with him right now because engaging with him doesn't work in that moment. I might turn the radio on a little bit. We're going to look around. We're going to look at the trees. We get home. We're going to take our dogs for a walk. And slowly it feels like I come back online.
And at that point, you're much more equipped to re-engage with your son than trying to fake it in the moment. I think sometimes in those moments we try to fake it or we get mad or other parts of us take over. But what I hear you saying is breathing through it, taking your time, being present to yourself, which as a parent, we're kind of jumping into parenting, but the reality is our kids see through our phoniness anyway. And sometimes they're just in their own world anyway. They don't, it's just, they're fine. Sometimes it's like, I'm just taking a minute to breathe through it, right? Every single one of us is so unique. So shouldn't our healthcare be tailored to your unique needs? Whenever I visited a traditional medicine doctor, I know they're trying their best, but so often I feel rushed or like I'm not really getting the customized care that I need. And that's why I'm so excited to introduce you to today's sponsor, Wild Health. Wild Health uses genetics, biometrics, and lifestyle data to help you determine what your unique body needs as far as nutrition, exercise, sleep, supplements, and more, so you can function at your best now and in the long run. For example, Wild Health can determine if you have elevated levels that can contribute to a wide range of current or potential issues, from brain fog or drowsiness during a busy workday to microbiome and gut health issues to indicators for diabetes or pre-diabetes. Once identified, 89% of Wild Health patients showed improvement with these challenges. Plus, Wild Health is easy to use. It's fully virtual via telemedicine and available everywhere in the U.S. Wild Health is generously extending Best of You listeners 20% off the cost of membership with code BESTOFYOU. Head over to wildhealth.com/bestofyou and use code BESTOFYOU at checkout. Make this commitment to yourself and start taking control of your health today at wildhealth.com/bestofyou. I love that I can get my favorite Purely Elizabeth granola auto-shipped to my front door every month, along with my favorite 7th generation paper products. Thrive Market only allows trusted, top-quality ingredients while restricting over 1,000 harmful ingredients like artificial flavors, high-fructose corn syrup, and more. Whether you're looking for organic kid snacks, low-sugar alternatives, or high-protein essentials, you can curate your own shopping experience with just a few clicks and trust that you're getting quality products so you can shop worry-free. When you join Thrive Market, you are also helping a family in need with their 1-for-1 membership matching program. You join, they give. Save time and money and shop Thrive Market today. Go to thrivemarket.com/bestofyou for 30% off your first order plus a free $60 gift. That's THRIVE market.com/bestofyou. thrivemarket.com/bestofyou. As you've done this work, as you've reconnected, and I so appreciate your sharing so openly your story from the past and then bringing it into now present day, because it's just so vivid, right? Like those moments with our own kids, replay the tape of our own pain points. That's just what happens. And I am curious, how do you connect spiritually? How is your spirituality a resource to you in those moments?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I'll answer it sort of broader and then more specific. What's happened over, I was going to an evangelical church here in New England, which was fine. All my friends went there and it was okay. And then COVID happened. And during COVID, I discovered a community called Closer Than Breath. And Closer Than Breath is a quote from Thomas Keating, who is a Catholic priest and sort of mystical, contemplative man and did lots of writing, and he writes that God is closer than our breath. And so I started doing some groups with this community, and they had an Enneagram and centering prayer group. And so I was always curious about Christian meditation and what that looked like and what did that mean. And so I started doing these centering prayer groups. And so centering prayer is the idea that we take 20 minutes, we take a word, and the word isn't necessarily a prayer word. The word is more like a windshield wiper, because our thoughts are going all the time, right? Our thoughts are chatty, and we use the word to kind of clean the windshield and sort of settle back into our heart, to settle into like a prayer, to have more connection to the divine. So that's what I started doing, is I started doing this contemplative type of Christianity, and the practice is called centering prayer. And so I started doing those groups, and then I ended up going to a Quaker meeting and having this sort of hour, because it was COVID still, and then I really enjoyed the silence. I'm a busy person, and so something happened for me during the silence, right? This sort of 20 minutes of silence, or so the Quaker meeting, it's an hour of silence around these people that just have this contemplative experience of God that just feels so beautiful and very aligned with what I know my little Baptist girl inside. It's like that feels attuned and aligned. And also because I did go to a seminary, when they do say stuff that's not aligned, I'm like, that's not right, but that's okay. Because I feel like I have this, my parts say it's okay because I have this foundation, right? I have this foundation. And so I can go and I can take what works for me and sort of leave the rest kind of idea. So anyways, that's sort of where I am spiritually now, is just enjoying this community of people that are just really connecting to God in this different way that feels a little bit more experiential. It feels more IFS-y, really, right? It's really about sort of going inside and connecting. I think the Quakers say to that inner light. And so we're connecting to that, to me, I would say the Holy Spirit, or to that divine inside. If you're IFS-y, you would say to that authentic self. It's just this way to reconnect and to be more grounded and sort of open up in a way that's like opening up to our true nature, right? We've kind of forgotten our true nature, and we've forgotten this light that we are. And so it's a time and a space for my parts to quiet down and for me to reconnect to the divine and reconnect to God. And that feels really beautiful to me. And so my partner is from North Carolina. When I go visit him, he goes to an evangelical church, and I enjoy that. It feels like home in so many ways. But often I sit with my eyes closed and just sort of take in sort of, what does God want to show me or tell me through the music and through the sermon. And so I think that is all a practice, whether it's a Sunday morning practice or a couple of times a week or a daily practice of really going inside. But as I go inside, it's to connect to my parts, but it's also to sort of ask my parts just to give me space, just to be here in the stillness. And in this stillness, nothing needs to be done. In this stillness, I'm just like plugging into my power source that wants me and loves me and is light and is love. And I can feel that ultimate wanting, the ultimate healing that is beyond me and beyond what I can get on this earth, beyond what my son can give me or my puppy or my partner. It's beyond anything like that. And then I have this experience that feels really healing.
What's kind of running through my mind as I'm listening is be still and know that I am God, right? And just the way you brought that around to the ultimate being wanted. And the more you sit in that and train yourself through the slowing down, through the being, through the intentional quiet, through the intentional practice of contemplative prayer, and you plug in literally to that, no, this is where I'm truly wanted, deep inside my core, where who I am meets who God is. That's what I believe, right? This is where who I am meets who God is. Your parts start to trust you. In those moments, then when you're in the car with your son, when those parts still rear up, you've begun to retrain yourself. No. There's more here, It's beautiful. I love that you took us there. And I also love, Tammy, that your joy, your busyness, you're such an energy, you're such a life force. You just light up a room when you're in a room. Those parts of you are just beautiful, right? And also, right, even with your son, you're lighting up the room and then he's kind of, Eeyoring, raining on your parade, right? And those parts of you hijack you. All of that is welcome around that centering place of here is God, here am I. I just love that you're tapping into that. That's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. I love the way you say that, right? This connection. It's like bringing all of me and all of my parts that are welcome and have good intentions and are wounded in some way and have all these burdens. We all come to the divine for healing and for connection and for light and for just silence, right? We all come and enjoy and take in this connection.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Tammy. Thank you so much for sharing with us. I would love for you to let the listeners know how they can connect with you and your work. Where can they find your podcast and your book and all the things you're doing?
Yeah. So if you just go to my website, everything's there, tammysollenberger.com. And that's where my book and podcast, and I'm on Instagram at IFS Tammy. And we have a YouTube channel where we're starting to there's a really cool new Start Here where we put 5 of some of our favorite episodes. So if you're new to IFS or you're curious about IFS, you can go to the Start Here page. It's on YouTube and it's on my website. And it has 5 of our favorite episodes. So, and we're going to add 5. We're going to keep adding and sort of make these playlists and stuff. So it's super fun, but that's where you go.
Before we close, I'd love to ask you 2 questions. What would you say to that younger 10-year-old with the wisdom that you have now?
What I would say and what I think about and what I'm currently working with a part of me, I have like a 17-year-old part that I'm really kind of hanging out with lately, is this sort of desire to play more. And I wish I would have played more, and I wish I would have, not in a shaming way or even a regretting way, but I think about like being really narrowly focused, and I wish I would have opened up and tried. So I would say play and experiment and try and draw and paint and music and just try things and really just experiment more. And that's what's beautiful about you. It's not having to succeed at anything. It's just playing. Go be successful at playing. That's what I would say. Go be successful at playing.
I love that. What would you say is bringing out the best of you right now?
I think what's bringing out the best of me is this relationship that I'm in. This long distance relationship I'm in. It's bringing out the best of me because it's making me think about, who do I want to be? I want to be more loving. What's keeping me from being loving? It's challenging me. It's challenging me to be like, okay, you're 50. Do you want to be in a loving relationship? Do you want that? So then what do you need to do? What parts do you need to work on? What needs to happen inside of you internally for you to have the external relationship you always wished you had? Because here's the really cool thing, and I don't recommend people get divorced or have 2 relationships, but when you do, and you end up doing the same thing, you're like, oh, shoot, that must be me. And so, okay, so you can have the same relationship you had the first time, or you can try something different. So what seems to be bringing out the best of me is being a little bit brave and a little bit vulnerable to love and to be loved in a really different way.
Wow, that's a whole word. I love that honesty. Again, Tammy, that's the freedom that comes with this work of really being able to look at your own self, your own parts, get really honest with yourself. What's mine to do differently? I love that you're getting this opportunity. You're the best. You're just such a light. And I'm so grateful for the time you gave to us today.
Thanks, Allison. And I could say the same thing about you. I appreciate your friendship and all that you do for the world and for me, just as a friend.
Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of The Best of You. It would mean so much if you take a moment to subscribe. You can go to Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you listen to podcasts and click the plus or follow button. That will ensure you don't miss an episode and it helps get the word out to others. While you're there, I'd love it if you leave your 5-star review. I look forward to seeing you back here next Thursday. And remember, as you become the best of who you are, you honor God, you heal others, and you stay true to your God-given self.